Welcome into another episode of the Faithful Dogs podcast. I am your host, Zach DeFranco, today because Tyler Wi-Fi is terrible and he cannot join us. Jack, as always, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
Doing good, dude. Obviously, we're doing this show a little early today. That's because at 4 o'clock, the Browns had about $11 million come off the cap, which is huge for us. As we know, Deandre Hopkins is a free agent. Watson definitely helped out the speculation a little bit and the excitement for Browns fans at the golf outing recently, talking about how, he'll make the call and let Andrew Berry do the rest. So that being said, Jack, let's get right into it, man. How
Yes,
do you
sir.
feel about this entire situation? That's basically all we're going to break down today. It's going to be a little quick hitter. It's basically the biggest news right now going on, other than OTAs, which we'll get into probably more next week. But Jack, how are you feeling about this whole situation? Obviously, with John Johnson's contract coming off the books, Jadeveon Clowney's coming off the books, we could probably make something work if Andrew Berry wanted to go this route. I think, either way, I think the Browns feel like they're good at the wide receiver position. But if you add someone like DeAndre Hopkins to pair again with Watson, and we know what they had done together in the past,
Yeah.
how would you feel personally first about that?
Well, I mean, I would love it. Obviously, just from the name perspective, just from the talent perspective, like DeAndre Hopkins is a fantastic receiver. I mean, he's had his best years with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun has had his best years with DeAndre Hopkins. And I think that if you were to just say in general, would you want DeAndre Hopkins on your team? I would say I would probably take him more times than I wouldn't. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other factors like last year he got suspended. How
Mhm.
likely is it that we could see another suspension? Just considering because we don't know exactly the whole situation around him getting suspended, like for steroids or whatever it was, and also just how much money is he going to want? Now,
Yeah.
obviously, you brought up that the Browns just cleared like 11 million. The number's kind of weird because of the way that the cap, like spot number 50 and 51 are calculated. Like it's around like 9.5, 10 million, but like who's really counting? So like
Not my
obvious,
money.
yeah, not my money, but
Mhm.
at this point, it's kind of just how much money is DeAndre Hopkins going to want, and also because there's obviously a lot of other teams that are in on him. You hear things about the Chiefs, you hear things about the Ravens, and just how big is his market going to be, and what kind of competition we're going to see for his services. So obviously, yes, I would love to have him, but it's got to be for the right price and it's got to be for the right amount of time. I don't want to see us giving him a long-term deal with a lot of money attached to it because I just don't think that would be in the best interest of the Cleveland Browns.
So Jack Duffin, as always, breaks it down perfectly. So before 4 o'clock today, the Browns had 4.9 million, about basically $5 million in cap space. Post June 1st, so as of 4 o'clock, uh, John Johnson saved 9.75, Clowney saved 1.1. But you add two players, Tillman, four players, excuse me, Tillman, Kelly, Dunn, and Forbes, which is like a total of 2 million. So it is roughly around 8 point something $1 million. Cap space as of tomorrow will be 13.8, so around $13.9 million. So, I mean, dude, I believe it is 100% possible that we're gonna make Andrew Berry is gonna make the call. He's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
try to at least get this done. He's building this offense around our now franchise quarterback. There's no doubt about that, and he's gonna do whatever it takes to put him in the best positions to win.
Oh
First
yeah,
of
for
all,
sure. And
and
I
and
I, I
and
think
if
that
you
that's
add
obvious.
yeah, and if you add someone that he's close with that he literally has called his brother, like you
Yeah.
do that, you just make him even 10 times happier, even if it's for a year, just to make a push this season. Because
Mhm.
I mean, if you add him on maybe like a 2 or 3 year deal, I think it does mean like Peoples Jones. I think he's gone. Possibly Amari Cooper after next
Yeah,
year is
Amari
gone.
Cooper. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
So
big one because
yeah.
he has no guaranteed money after this year, so he's going to want to
Mhm.
like completely renegotiate his contract, and that's
Mhm.
that's where he becomes a candidate. That's where he becomes a trade candidate. So I mean that's kind of the way that I've been seeing it too. Also, we've been hearing stuff where uh, Deshaun's been talking about like he's willing to do whatever if it means helping the Browns, financially to make it work. Now, does that mean that he's willing to maybe change the way that this year's contract is structured, the next year's contract is structured to maybe open up some space maybe not as much guaranteed money. Like if he did something like that, then it's a completely different conversation. And in that case, it would just be such a crazy, situation where, you have a quarterback who you're paying $230 million guaranteed, and he's willing to take less, like at least for a couple of years, to get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins here. That would be insane. Just from like, we would never seen something like that, at least for the Browns. And you were talking about Amari. I mean, if we were to bring him in, I've been seeing people say you would probably want to bring him in for more than a year, because Amari loses that guaranteed money. He's going to want to renegotiate your contract, and you're not going to want to probably, keep him for much longer after that. So having a guy like DeAndre Hopkins for like a year or two, probably they would probably be aiming for, would probably be the best bet. So I mean,
Yeah.
that it's a crazy situation, but I definitely think that, especially because Deshaun is being so open and honest about it, and saying, yeah, this is something that I really want. I'm sure Andrew Berry's doing everything in his power to just identify, is this something we can do? Is this something we can afford? And trying to make it happen. And we'll see if he's able to succeed. But I mean, I don't think anyone thought that Deshaun was coming here last year, so it's just going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Watson cannot reduce his salary past the minimum, like of what he can make.
Well, right.
So like he's already taken a restructure, so he cannot reduce his salary anymore below the minimum of what he's going to make, with his first deal, basically. So you're looking at, I don't even know if has Miles even.
I'm not sure.
Taking a restructure, maybe Ward, like players like that, if they also are like, okay, if we can go get, another technically on top of Amari Cooper, you get 2 number 1 wide receivers. Elijah Moore, we haven't even seen the full potential of Elijah Moore in the NFL yet. People are saying he can potentially become your, 1A, 1B to Amari Cooper.
Well, I mean, you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, you have the best wide receiver league core in the league, I would think. Like, I don't think it's even close. Obviously in the North, but I think in the league.
Well, in the North, it's arguably, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and stuff like that on the Bengals. So it's definitely better than the Ravens. It's definitely, in my opinion, it's definitely better than the Steelers. It's good, dude. You're competing on all cylinders. If you go get DeAndre Hopkins, you saw the Zarius Smith move was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
If we can go land DeAndre Hopkins to top it off, dude.
Oh yeah, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of people would say that would be the best depth at wide receiver. I agree.
For sure.
Because you still have Don Peoples-Jones. You still have we
need to see what Tillman's going to be. You have Marquise Goodwin. You have a bunch of guys who are and obviously, then you have to start asking, well, what about David Bell? What about a couple of these other guys that
Browns are still high on Bell?
They're very high on Bell. But then you have to say, well, what about Michael Woods II? What about a couple of these other guys? Will they try to keep them? Will they cut them? Andrew Berry's not been very aggressive in cutting his draft picks. And even though Michael Woods is a 6th round pick. David Bell didn't get a lot of work last year. I mean, these are guys that I'm sure Andrew Berry is going to try to find a way to keep him on the roster if this were to happen. But it does kind of call into question, like, who really does become an option on this team? Because, I mean, you bring DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, it's him, Amari, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cedric Tillman, probably Marquise Goodwin. That's 6 guys already. And what are you going to bring, like 7 or 8 wide receivers? I mean, it'll be a really difficult decision for them once they finally actually get to training camp and they have to figure out how they're going to try to cut down these guys. But it would be a good problem to have.
Yeah. So Diana Rossini has already reported that the Patriots are interested, have not expressed interest, but are interested in DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're a dark horse to get him. Hopkins loves Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Bills are not all in. They just can't afford him.
They can't afford him. There's no money for them.
And Cowboys and Jets are not even interested in him.
Which I'm surprised of. I would have thought that maybe the Cowboys would be interested because they seem to be always.
I thought the Jets. I thought maybe the Jets getting Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, sort of interest. I wonder what's the Jets cap space looking like? Are they good on cap space? I mean, they got a lot of rookies, so you would assume that they probably do. But did they take on the entirety of Aaron Rodgers' contract? Oh,
I believe it was majority of it, if anything.
Yeah.
I haven't really
So
even looked into
so
that.
so yeah, their cap space might just be weird, and they might. I mean, they're probably pretty comfortable with the guys that they got. They've got two really good, a couple good, really good wide receivers over there. They might just be trying to stick with who they got and not overshadow guys like Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's obviously rumors that he is interested in going back to
Houston, which would be
Houston.
interesting. That would be really interesting.
Yeah. I don't think that's happening. I think that was a jack my price up kind of move.
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
Well, I
So
think that the fact that the Chiefs and the Ravens, and I've heard people even say, oh well, what if he goes to the Dolphins? And it's like, I think that these are all just like teams where it's like, yeah, obviously, I'm sure they'd love to have him, but it's a lot of posturing, and it's his agent doing his job and trying to drum up more interest for him.
who would you be willing to give up on the wide receiver room? I see Jeff said if it means Mike Woods. Like, yeah,
Oh no, for sure, Mike Woods would just
Mike
be
Woods,
gone.
yeah. Sia, Schwartz, Sia, like players like that, obviously. But like when you talk about big names, when you talk about like Donovan Peoples Jones, who was due for an extension,
Mhm.
um,
It
Amari
would make it
Cooper.
awkward. It would make it very awkward, just because like DPJ is just a guy that he's a very solid receiver in the league, and getting rid of him, like, it would be difficult for Andrew for me to see Andrew Berry just outright saying, okay, well, we're just going to let him walk, and that's just it, because DPJ has gotten better every single year. He's been super productive. He was super productive last year, even in a really turbulent situation. And so getting rid of him when he's been super productive he was a 6th round pick, right? DPJ was a 6th round pick. Or was
Yeah.
he? Yeah, like, I mean, he was. I mean, no one thought that he was going to be like anything, and he came out and he's shown that he's a very, very proficient NFL wide receiver. So, I mean, it's not going to matter. Like, obviously, if it's just like this year and you bring him in, it's not going to matter if they succeed. If they go out, they win a Super Bowl, no one's going to care about if Donovan Peoples-Jones is walking. But if you
Mhm.
don't, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, now we have a 31-year-old or 32-year-old at that time, Deandre Hopkins, and Amari Cooper is probably leaving because he wants more guaranteed money, because this is the last chance for a big contract for him, because he's going to be like 29. And DPJ's money, we just can't afford him. And then you have, obviously Elijah Moore, who you still have under contract, and Cedric Tillman. I mean, then you start to say, okay, well, is our wide receiver core still as good as it was, and are we regressing in that way? So I mean, it's really just one of those things where Andrew Berry is looking towards the future and probably trying to figure out what's more logical, obviously in the short term, but also what can I build on going into the long term. And I'm just curious if DeAndre Hopkins is really a player that they have in their long-term plans, considering just who they've drafted, how they've drafted, and where guys' progressions are going. Because obviously David Bell, we think he can be great. Obviously, Andrew Berry has a lot of confidence in him. They drafted him in the 3rd round last year. So you would think that, those guys are going to get like progression and they're going to be better. But if you bring in these guys, that's going to hamper their ability to get the ball. I just don't really know. I think that Andrew Berry wants to make the move because it's, if you want to win football games, you get the best players. But if you don't win it all this year, what does that really make for the rest of your wide receiver core moving forward?
Yeah, and it means how many wide receivers do you think we keep on the roster?
Yeah.
So right now you would have Cooper, DPJ, Moore, Goodwin, Tillman, Bell. That's 7, right?
Yeah.
So if you do add DeAndre Hopkins, one of those guys basically has to be an odd man out. And with
Yeah.
DPJ being on a contract year, my guess would be Donovan Peoples-Jones. A lot of people don't agree with that. But
What,
my
gets
guess would be
traded or cut or what?
probably you probably wouldn't get even much for him because he's on a contract year. But yeah, I would assume either a trade or after the season let him walk because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, dude, that if you add Hopkins and then keep that room that I just named, you have 8 wide receivers on the roster, and then you not even accounting Felton if he goes
Oh,
as a wide
Felton.
receiver.
Oh God.
He's getting reps at wide receiver already in OTAs though.
Yeah,
So
but he
it's
always is. He's
ooh,
always getting reps at wide receiver. Oh, Tyler's here. He's
let's see how good his
early.
Wi-Fi is. Let's see
He's
how good his Wi-Fi
early.
is.
What's up, Tyler?
We're gonna see if this Wi-Fi is up to par.
We're gonna
find
hope.
out pretty quickly.
So we were actually just breaking down like how many wide receivers were going to go into the roster this year. We have 7. So If you add DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler, who is the odd man out to you?
Easy. Donovan Peoples-Jones is gone. You have to do right by the player too, and I think give Donovan Peoples-Jones the opportunity to go potentially start somewhere else, earn a new contract because he deserves it. He's been a great player for the Browns, coming in as a 6th-round pick. The fact that he is still on the roster, most 6th-round picks would dream of having that type of opportunity. You can probably get probably a day 3 pick for DPJ, I think, at this point, because he's on a 1-year deal, so that makes it difficult. To me, I think it's him. If you add Hopkins, someone has to go. It's not Elijah Moore because they love Elijah Moore, and you just brought him in. It would be DPJ. I saw Jack Duffin mention Amari Cooper. They wouldn't do that at this point. I think that's more of if it's a 2-year deal for Hopkins, then you look at 2024 for Cooper, which we've already discussed. But yeah, DPJ, and it's sad because I love DPJ, but I think the reality is we've all agreed on this show, DPJ's gone after this year anyway. So just do it now, man. It would be unfortunate, but you know what? To bring in a talent like DeAndre Hopkins, you got to make sacrifices. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is a sacrifice some Browns fans are very sentimental. They wouldn't want to make. But if you want an all-pro wide receiver, it's what you got to do to get him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I truly believe that if Donovan Peoples-Jones was in the Browns' future plans, I just feel like he would already have that contract. He would already have had that contract. I think we all agree with that. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree, Tyler. I already said it. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones would be the odd man out. I think you would even let him just go seek his trade if we ended up,
absolutely
getting Hopkins. You would just let him go see what teams are interested in you, go see what your value is. And I think at that point, you have Hopkins. You just take whatever you can get for DPJ. So, yeah. I mean, Jack, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like if we get DeAndre Hopkins, DPJ's gone at some point within the next year. Like he's either gone right after the trade, like before the season starts, or he walks at the end of the year. And I mean, I think that's just the way that it would work out. And obviously, I think a lot of us would be upset about it just because, DPJ has been a great player, but that's how the money would work. And obviously, like you were saying, Tyler, Elijah Moore is a guy that they really believe in. They invested a 3rd-round pick into him or a 2nd-round pick into him. So obviously it would be he would be the guy who they choose over him. So yeah, I mean, DPJ would just be the odd man out. Obviously, I love DPJ, and I think we all love DPJ, but it would just kind of just be the situation and how it would have to progress.
I mean, I think if we put up a poll on Twitter, would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins or Donovan Peoples-Jones? It's a no-brainer.
Well,
the only people that would disagree are those that are sentimental or those that think or believe the narrative that DeAndre Hopkins is washed. Essentially, those are the only people that. So again, guys, it's unfortunate. Like it would be unfortunate. I mean, a lot of us would probably be a little disappointed having to get rid of DPJ, especially just given that he has been a very significant part of this offense since he's been in Cleveland. Hard to believe as a 6th-round pick that he's been able to accomplish that. But everyone's going to be over the moon if we get DeAndre. Let me say this: 98% of the fan base will be over the moon if we get DeAndre Hopkins. So, it is what it is. It's going to be. I think what's curious to me, guys, and I've been thinking about this today. It's been a hectic day, but I still had some time at lunch to think about this. What if DeAndre Hopkins shocks us all and doesn't go to a contender? Why not go back to a team that just wants to throw a bag at him? I mean, because he is 30.
That is true, and this is probably his last chance to get a bag. So that being said, that rumor about him being interested going back to Texans to play with CJ Stroud possibly and just get a bag to help his development, do you think that would have any legs to it then? Because I mean, Sports Illustrated already reported that he probably he doesn't want to take any less of what Odell Beckham Jr. made from the Ravens. So
I think there's merit to that he would do that. Now the question is, are they willing to give him that money? The biggest thing with DeAndre Hopkins is the money aspect. That's the reason the Cardinals couldn't trade him, because no one wants to pay him that contract. Are the Texans? I mean, now the Texans have cap space. Are they willing to give DeAndre Hopkins a 1 or 2 year deal at $15 million a year to partner CJ Stroud? They very well might. Keep in mind that DeAndre Hopkins and D'Amico Ryans, I believe, were on the roster at the same time. I could be wrong on that, but if they were, and you want and they want a veteran wide receiver on that side, they already brought in Robert Woods. who's a great veteran leader, great receiver, interesting fit. Just given, again, Robert Woods could have probably gone to a number of places. But same with Hopkins. I mean, if you do that and you bring in DeAndre Hopkins to the Texans, CJ Stroud's going to have a really good chance to succeed. So I think there's truth to it. I mean, what do you guys think?
I personally think, because in March, Pat McAfee was talking with JJ Watt, and JJ Watt said that he believes and basically knows that DeAndre Hopkins at a point in his career where he just wants to go win. He just wants to be on a team that can contend, that can win. I personally believe that's the truth. I think he'll still get the money. I think, though, that he personally wants to be somewhere where he can win, somewhere where he feels comfortable, that has a good organizational structure. And like Watson said, the Browns at this point, crazy enough, cross all of those boxes off. Like, I never thought I'd say that as a fan, but we do. And we have a great team all around. We have a great coaching staff. We have a great GM. I truly believe that the Browns could still make something happen. I do.
Yeah. Yeah, because like the thing is that his situation's different than like a guy like Devontae Adams, where Devontae Adams wasn't getting paid what he thought he was worth in a place like Green Bay, so he went to Las Vegas to get that huge contract. DeAndre Hopkins has already made a bunch of money with the Cardinals and with and so I think that he is at that point in his career, kind of like what Zach was saying, where he just needs to win. Like, he just wants to be in a place where he can succeed. Like, obviously in the Texans case, like he was there for that 1 year when they got to the divisional round. They obviously didn't do anything after that. And the Cardinals has just been a mess for him. Obviously last year having that issue where he was out for half the season, and then the year before getting bounced in the first round. So it's a whole thing where I think that he's just obviously looking for, can he get money, enough money to make it so it's worth his while to just say, hey, secure the bag, just retire with a huge bank account, or do I want to try to find a place like the Chiefs or Baltimore or even here in Cleveland with Deshaun, and see if he can find success and finally get to a higher I guess succeed more than he has already in his career in terms of winning a Super Bowl, getting to a conference championship, something like that.
Now, don't forget, he did say himself on Pat McAfee, DeAndre Hopkins, he did say that if it was a trade, he would be more flexible on the last 2 years of his contract for that team. So now that he got cut and he can go seek his own deal, he got new representation from Clutch Sports. Does that still apply? I don't think so. I think now it's okay. Well, can I get paid, and can I still go to a contender at the same time? But Tyler, we brought it up earlier. I know you probably saw the reports. Bills basically can't afford him. Jets and Cowboys aren't interested. There are a lot of contending teams that are, and the Chiefs probably aren't going to go after him at this point. There are a lot of contending teams outside of the Browns who can't really afford DeAndre Hopkins if he wants what Odell Beckham Jr. got. So
that's kind of where things lie, and it makes you wonder if the Browns do go out and sign Hopkins, because I saw Jack Duffin mention possibly a 2-year deal. That would shock me. I get you can move off Amari Cooper, and that's $20 million right there. But guys, as of right now, and we know this will change. So you kind of have to take this number with a grain of salt. But the Browns are $61 million over the cap in 2024, as of right now. So you go in and bring DeAndre Hopkins, to me, I don't think it has to be a 1-year contract. You have to get that money off the books next year. And then the question is, what do you do? Oh, man. This gets really interesting, because what do you do with Amari Cooper then? Are you really going to pay Amari Cooper $20 million? Are you going to bring back Nick Chubb on his contract? What are you going to do? This is really an all-in year. Zadarius Smith will come off the books as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's an all-in year, clearly. You're 61 over the cap. The Bills are in a very similar situation. That's why they're not going to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. And they really like Dalton Kincaid. They're going to use him as a big slot at tight end. But I know the Chiefs have been raving about Justin Ross, the undrafted free agent receiver out of Clemson, who many, including myself, believe is a first-round pick, but battled a lot of injury. They love Kadarius Toney. The Chiefs believe, it sounds like, that they have their guys there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the teams that you would think would be interested in DeAndre Hopkins, or there's reports that they are, a lot of these teams already got their wide receiver rooms made up. I mean, the one team, if there's one team to me that makes a lot of sense and it has the cap space, if I'm being honest, the Atlanta Falcons make a ton of sense here because you have Robinson on a rookie contract. Drake London's a rookie. Outside of Drake London and Kyle Pitts, you have nothing at wide receiver if you're the Falcons. You have Matt Collins. Woo, whoop-de-doo. You need to add another guy. The Falcons have the cap space, and that division is as wide open as it's ever been. If they go out and sign DeAndre Hopkins, they'll probably win that division. I don't think Desmond Ridder is going to be the worst quarterback in the league. I think he can be solid. If he's solid, they're a playoff team. So look at teams like that. Teams like the Browns, it's just tough. I think having Watson here is a big reason behind the fact that we're even connected to him right now. But Watson's even happy with the room. So is Kevin Stefanski. I think Andrew Berry, as we know, guys, he has his price point. Is he going to come off of that? That's going to be the question, and that's going to determine whether or not DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Browns, because he might want to win, and I believe that. I also believe at 30 years old, he wants paid.
Mm-hmm.
Got to find a happy medium.
Yeah, and you got to really understand, like, I don't think Andrew Berry, he hasn't done it for any player. He has never come off of his price point for any player. I just don't see it happening. I don't see him being like, okay, let me give you $20 million a year as well and have two $20 million, receivers in Cleveland next year. I just don't see that happening at all, dude. And I really do think DeAndre Hopkins could go get an Odell Beckham-like contract even for just the season. I could see it happening. There's some team out there that's going to pay him to help either develop their young new quarterback. I mean, what about the Colts? Are the Colts even being brought up in this? I mean,
well, they got. I could see it, but I also just don't. I think they want to keep their young. I mean, they have Alec Pierce. They drafted last year out of Cincinnati. Very talented young player. They brought in Josh Downs, who I wish the Browns would have drafted. I get it. I get why they didn't, because it makes a lot of sense now after you add Elijah Moore. They also have Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, they got three guys right there they really like. They like Jelani Woods, tight end. They have a lot of talent that they have brought in. Hopkins would make sense for them. I just don't think they want to go that route. But who am I? I'm just some dude on Twitter. I don't know.
That's how we all are, man. That's why this is Hopkins watch and speculation. Basically, we're here. We did the Watson watch. A lot of us were like, okay, we don't know if it's actually going to happen, and it did. So we have to at least dip our feet in this. We got to talk about this because now you have Watson, who's very close with him. It could happen still. It really can.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I guess the question we have to ask ourselves, what are you willing to sacrifice in the future to potentially make this deal happen? Who are you willing to sacrifice? Like, let's say Hopkins wants a 2-year. Maybe Hopkins doesn't want a 1-year contract at his age. Maybe he wants a little bit more security. Because, again, he's coming off some injury. He's coming off suspension on top of that. Maybe he wants a 2-year deal. Who are you sacrificing to give him that 2-year contract? Are you sacrificing Amari Cooper in 2024, who some argue has produced better than DeAndre Hopkins the last 2 years? Are you willing to do that? And Amari Cooper's younger, too, than DeAndre Hopkins. That's what you guys have to ask yourselves. Are you willing to sacrifice Nick Chubb in 2024 with not having that potential guy that's going to replace him right now on the roster? Jerome Ford might be it. He might not be it. What are you guys willing to sacrifice if DeAndre Hopkins wants a 2-year contract or maybe even a 3-year? Maybe he wants security more than anything. What are you guys willing to sacrifice? What are fans willing to sacrifice in order to make a DeAndre Hopkins deal happen if that's what it comes down to? Maybe you have to get rid of some guys. What are you guys willing to do? How far are you willing to take it in order to get DeAndre Hopkins on this roster? Because some fans would move night and day to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like
it's a 1-year deal for me. Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anything longer than a year, or like obviously it depends on how Andrew Berry and the Browns view Amari Cooper and whether or not they want to keep him any longer than this year or next year. Like it's got to be 1 or 2 years because it doesn't make sense to want to like basically really kneecap your cap situation even more than it already kind of is in order to get this done because he turns 31 in 5 days. So he's going to be 31 in 5 days. So then let's say it's a 3-year deal. What, you're going to be running him out there when he's 34? That just doesn't make any sense from especially from an Andrew Berry perspective, who obviously we know is very cognizant about age and keeping the roster young and sustainable year over year. So I just don't see him investing a bunch of money into a 31-year-old wide receiver, especially when you have to also consider that he's going to ask for a decent amount of money. Obviously not as much as I think that, like he's not asking for 20 million, but I mean, 15 million is how much OBJ got. If that's what he wants, I mean, that's 3 years, 15 million for a 31, 2, 3, 4-year-old wide receiver. I just don't think it's something that Andrew Berry would consider. I personally wouldn't like it if it was that long and for that much money either. So, I mean, 1 year, 2 years, we can probably make it work, but any longer than that, you're asking to just completely just destroy all of this hard work in this roster that we built up over the past couple of years.
I, as a fan, would love it. As a fan, I would love it. Jack Duffin kind of explained it perfectly. Hypothetically, Hopkins would be 25 million over 2 years. You trade DPJ for a 4th round pick in 2024, and you move on from Cooper next offseason if you're planning, if you're planning to keep Hopkins to kind of balance it out. I don't know, man. I kind of agree with Jack. I personally would keep the wide receiver room as is, and he also said just use that money and add another defensive tackle. I feel like that would be the route I would personally go as a front office. I'm not a GM, obviously, but as a front office, that's the route I would go. And Andrew Berry loves to roll over cap too. He loves to roll over cap to begin with. So
I think. I mean, if we look at it, if you look at the Browns cap space, they're going to have around 18 million or so. I find it hard based off just what we've seen from Andrew Berry. And now, again, we've gone all in this year. There's no doubt just with the moves we made. Andrew Berry really going to sacrifice that potential? Like, what happens if Nick Chubb goes down and you have to trade for somebody? What, are you just going to trade for some scrub? Or are you going to trade for someone that can actually help you win? That's what it kind of comes down. What if someone goes down and you need to make a desperate trade? What if you don't have the cap space to make that happen?
Yeah.
It's difficult because is Andrew Berry going to sacrifice that potential cap space that he has and let alone be able to roll over 18 million into next year when you're already 61 over the cap? Now, again, you're going to restructure Deshaun Watson. That's going to change that. You're probably going to restructure Myles Garrett. You're going to release or trade Wyatt Teller. You're going to possibly move on from Amari Cooper. Like, there are moves that are going to be made here to open up space, but at the same time, guys, is Andrew Berry going to sacrifice that flexibility that he has? Is he willing to do that to bring DeAndre Hopkins to Cleveland? And Deshaun Watson, keep in mind, it doesn't obviously Watson wants him, but he's not demanding DeAndre Hopkins.
No,
we get DeAndre Hopkins.
Actually, me and Tyler have personally been told that Watson has not once demanded a single thing from this front office yet. And I don't think he will. I don't even think he was really like that in Houston, other than demanding the trade. Like he's not that kind of player. So I don't know. I think he trusts Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry has already proven to him that he's going to build a team around him, offense and defense. This team is going to be a contender, but you have to keep it a contender too. At the same point, you have to leave a window open. I think yes, this year is probably right now our best shot to go to a Super Bowl. I think it is. But I think you have to keep that window open just in case, because you never know. And as you said, Tyler, Nick Chubb goes down this year. What do? You Jerome Ford and Felton. You bring up Kelly. But we're also at that kind of same spot at defensive tackle. If one of those guys goes down, you're kind of SOL right there too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Siaki Ika is your best run stopper last season if you had him. He's your best one tech last season if you had him.
And that's sad to say. Wow.
So
see, guys, it's tough for Jack. I mean, there are more ways you can use this money that you're going to have. DeAndre Hopkins, don't get me wrong. I mean, we'd be over the moon if we got him. I'd rather complete the rest of the roster personally. That's
what me and Zach were talking about. I'm like, I would love it. Obviously, just from the name and just how good the talent perspective, it's great. But obviously, when you start adding in all the other stuff, like he's 31. He came off a year where he was suspended for half the season. He's been injured the year before. There's all these other asterisks, and it comes down to, do you think that the wide receiver room needs a guy like DeAndre Hopkins right now. I don't think it does. Obviously, again, it's just you would love to have him, and I don't think that even Deshaun Watson thinks that he needs him. I think it's just like, hey, my buddy just came out on the free agent market. I would love to play with him again, but like again, it's not like a critical thing where he needs him to succeed here, or the Browns need him to succeed to have a successful offense. I think that we have all the weapons that we need. It's just like, hey, if you can somehow work out a deal with him obviously under Andrew Berry's discretion and how much he thinks that DeAndre Hopkins is worth and what he thinks he can work out in terms of a contract, then great. But if not, then I don't think that Andrew Berry's going to really sweat over it, because it's not something that I think he needs to do to make this offense work. I think this offense already has all the pieces it needs to succeed. And obviously he would probably rather have all that cap space open and all of the options that provides than to have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins who knows what could happen, even 6 months from now, when like you were saying, where someone goes down and all of a sudden you're SOL, you have no money, you have no ability to make adjustments, and then the whole season's lost because of one bad transaction.
Go get a defensive tackle. Matt Ioannidis, for some reason, is still available. I hope he's doing well. Haven't heard a single peep from him this entire off. I've never known an NFL player that you never see anything connected to besides fans just hoping you sign him. Shelby Harris is available. Great defensive tackles. I see people mentioning linebackers in the chat. Miles Jack, I'll pass. That dude's been washed for 2 years. If you can't make it in Pittsburgh as a linebacker, don't come here, basically, is what I would say, because Pittsburgh loves their linebackers. I would look at possibly Rashard Evans, I believe, is still available. And was coached by Jim Schwartz in Tennessee. Just something to keep in mind if you're looking at a linebacker. Running back, I still believe you need one. I get it. People seem excited about Jerome Ford, and that's great. Okay, I got Jerome Ford. I got John Kelly, and apparently Demetric Felton's moved back to running back. Like, I don't know, guys. Like, are you guys content with the running back room? Because I'm not. Like, I need a situation, and I think this is going to happen. I'm not saying he signs here. I need Cordell Patterson to get cut, is what I need, because he's the guy you bring in. Yeah, and it's a no-brainer for me at that point.
Yeah, that's the guy I've been – dog toys, love it. That's the guy that I personally have been kind of – if it's free agency, I like J.D. McKissick. And if it's trade and possibly the same situation where they could release him because they don't see – good enough value in a trade for him. Patterson, dude, he is like the perfect replacement right now for this year for a Kareem Hunt. I would love that move.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on Jerome Ford. I think that he is a guy that can be a great rotational piece. Obviously, you would want a guy that probably has more receiving prowess. So like a guy like Cordell Patterson, who was essentially a receiver for the majority of his career, you would want a guy like that to come in. He would be a perfect fit, especially like a year or two. And yeah, J.D. McKissick also a really good option. I mean, you stupid dog. Really? Come here,
Keith. To add to that, I personally. I disagree, dude. I don't think another running back is a waste of money on this roster. I don't. Nick Chubb, if knock on wood, if he goes down.
I'm just hoping that Jerome Ford is like a good follow-up replacement, the guy that they're grooming to become that guy.
How do we know though that he is?
I know. That's the thing. Obviously,
that's
we don't
what I'm saying.
know.
It's uncertainty.
I'm saying that. Yeah, obviously there's uncertainty. That's why I think we need another guy. I don't want to go in with just Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford and hope it works out. I'm hoping that we can get another guy like J.D. McKissick, like Cordell Patterson, that you can, because 3 is probably the perfect number for the Browns system in terms of they want to run the ball a lot. They want to get guys out wide. They want a lot of guys on the line. So I think that's probably the best. But I do think that we don't need to look for a guy that's going to replace Chubb or anything like that. Just a guy who's going to be able to be in the rotation. Oh, Jeff, no.
Jeff wants Zeke.
It's not going to happen, man. I'm sorry.
Now, Jeff, if we didn't have Nick Chubb and we were uncertain on who our starter would be, then you know what? You could give me Zeke on a 1-year deal, and I'd be all right with it.
Yeah, I don't know. No. I'm good on Zeke.
I mean, I would have loved it. I would have loved it because obviously he's a Ohio State boy, but I mean, oh my goodness. But
Your dogs are really in.
I don't know what she's barking at, but I don't know. Maybe she really doesn't like DeAndre Hopkins. She doesn't want him here. But no, she doesn't like Zeke. That's what it is. She doesn't like Zeke. But I mean, I think that he's just not someone who you can really rely on at this point in his career. Like he's still a decent run blocker, I guess, but he just doesn't have the legs, man. He's just gassed. I mean, he put so much wear and tear the first couple of years, and he's just, I don't know if he's really capable of surviving a full NFL schedule.
Yeah, man, it's tough.
Bengals cut. Where are you seeing that, Mick?
There was always a possibility they would cut Mixon, but at this point, it seems pretty late to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Not seeing anything on Joe Mixon. Not seeing anything. But if they do, sign me. I got Chase Brown in Dynasty, so please please cut Joe Mixon. Even though they would just sign Zeke if they did.
Yeah. 100%.
At that point, because that would just make a lot of sense. I seriously have nothing against Jerome Ford. I don't like the idea of, if you're a team that's winning now, as your backup running back, you're banking on someone that you have seen nothing from so far. If they really liked Jerome Ford, they would have been playing him over Kareem Hunt. Mm-hmm. That's how I see it. Why would Kareem Hunt didn't want to be here, and he was gone after the year? When you're in that situation, why are you even playing Kareem Hunt? You've seen he's washed anyway. Play Jerome Ford. Play the rookie. See if he's the guy that you think can eventually replace Nick Chubb. Or there was a guy as a UDF agent, Sean Tucker out of Syracuse, you could have gone in and gotten. And Tampa Bay did. And I think they're going to get a really good player there. I don't know, guys. It's nothing against Jerome Ford. I'm not very confident because if you, again, knock on wood, Nick Chubb goes down, like Jerome Ford's your guy, essentially. Mm-hmm. Jerome John Demetrius Felton. I'm sorry. That doesn't give me much confidence. It just doesn't.
No, and I get that for sure.
It also makes you wonder if they're interested in seeing what Hassan Hall can bring to the table in the running back room too. Because I personally believe they might be, a little high on him as well. So maybe they do just go young behind Chubb. I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. I definitely want to see Jerome Ford get his snaps. Yeah. But outside of that,
I respect your opinion as well, Keith. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Respect everyone's opinion.
We're all about respect.
Yeah.
We're all about respect. I think going back to what you said about Hassan Hall, Zach, the thing that now I wonder about Hassan Hall, the big thing that he was brought in for, I feel like, was to return kicks because his ability at Louisville that he displayed was next level. And then at Georgia Tech, he didn't do it as much. But at Louisville, he looked like an elite returner. Now, essentially, returns are nothing in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know how he makes this roster now.
Yeah,
same with Jakeem Grant. I think
same with Jakeem Grant. Exactly.
I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, with the new changes, like
makes you wonder what's going to happen. Like because they gave him a pretty good guaranteed contract. They gave him, I believe, $150,000 guaranteed. And again, nothing. It's not anything against Hassan Hall. I feel like that's a big reason they brought him in was to return. And now if he's not going to do that, I don't know if he's the guy you should have brought in at running back because there were so many other guys. Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina, of course, Baltimore signs him. And he's going to bring something completely different to that backfield, just pure speed. To line up with Lamar Jackson just isn't fair. But then again, Sean Tucker, there were other undrafted free agent rookie running backs that you could have gone out and potentially gotten. And I feel like Hassan Hall, the reason that they tried to find a guy like that, someone that a lot of teams might not have been looking at as much, and the reason he wasn't drafted, he's more of a return specialist. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like I don't really know what to think of the Hassan Hall edition. I really don't. Because I liked it at first. I really did. I actually was like, okay, I see this. He's our future returner. Makes a lot of sense. But now I'm like, there were all these UDFA running backs, and now if we're not going to be pretty much returning kicks in the NFL anymore, it didn't make sense now to sign him. So it's tough. It's tough. Andrew Berry's got a plan, I know, but
yeah, absolutely. Definitely going to get more into this next week as well. So as we end it here, any final thoughts from you guys strictly on the DeAndre Hopkins situation? Any final thoughts? Anything you guys want to add?
Don't push yourself to try to make the trade, the signing happen. If it works, do it. If not, don't worry about it. I'm not super concerned with our wide receiver room. I think our wide receiver room is really good.
I think offensively, our wide receiver room I think it's locked in, dude. I really do.
I mean, it's deep. You got good guys for now. For the future, you got Elijah Moore. You got Cedric Tillman. Who knows what DPJ's situation is? Who knows what Amari Cooper's situation is? But I mean, you have guys who are good, who can win now. You can win a Super Bowl with these guys. I mean, look who, like, obviously I don't want to say, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes is Deshaun Watson or Deshaun Watson is Patrick Mahomes. But I mean, look what Patrick Mahomes won with last year. Like, you don't need the best players or the best wide receivers to have a good quarterback. You have a guy like Deshaun Watson who, if you think he's a top 5 quarterback, he's going to make all of the wide receivers better. So you don't need to worry about getting a guy like, or taking a Hail Mary on a guy like DeAndre Hopkins and hoping it works.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Real quick, Keith. Hassan Hall's not slow. I kind of understand why you see that, because when he runs, he kind of looks that way. He runs a 4.46. So, I mean, he's got some speed. Sorry, I just want to answer that question for him.
Oh, you're good. Looking it up. Okay, so Deshaun Watson's best year in Houston, 2020. His wide receivers were Brandon Cooks, Fuller. Was Hopkins there?
Mm-mm.
I thought he was in Houston.
He got traded.
They traded him for David
Kenny
Johnson.
Stills, right?
Kenny Stills might have been there, I think. Maybe Randall Cobb, because Cobb was in Houston for a short period of time. But maybe that not sure on that one, actually. The three you mentioned, I believe, were there, though.
Yeah, Cooks, Fuller, Cobb, Atkins, Kiki Kuti was there. Like, Fells. Like, those were his leading wide receivers. Like, yeah, Cooks. No one sleeps on Cooks. Will Fuller, we had that talk all season. That didn't happen. So, guys, I'm just saying, this is the best wide receiver group that all around that Watson has had. So, I don't know. I don't think it's like a thing that Andrew Berry looks at and he's like, yeah, we need to add DeAndre Hopkins now to this room. If he does, it's just another toy that we can play with on the offensive side of the ball. But I really don't think it's the most important thing that Andrew Berry is going to see needs to be fit in right now. That's just my personal opinion. As a fan, yes, I would say 100% of the Browns fans would be like, okay, shit, we added DeAndre Hopkins to this offense. But I just don't personally think it's the thing that needs to happen right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Keith brings up a good point. Wouldn't want that D-Hop to slow Elijah Moore's growth down. I can agree with that, but Elijah Moore, to me, is going to have a major role regardless. I mean, it's quite clear he is going to be a focal point of this offense and going to get well over 100 targets if he can stay healthy this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell people this. Don't get your hopes, and I've said it, don't get your hopes up for signing DeAndre Hopkins, but just know Andrew Berry all offseason has kept Browns fans, like, when it's quiet is when he does something.
Yeah.
It's been quiet the last couple. I mean, yeah, fans are talking like, okay, we're going to go, like, cool, let's go get DeAndre Hopkins. It's been really quiet, though. Mary Kay Cabot posted a couple articles on Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, but it's been a little quiet the last couple days. Just keep that in mind. And just know, Andrew Berry surprised us with the Zadarius Smith trade. He very well could surprise us by signing DeAndre Hopkins. But I would not get your hopes up, because also there's so much talent that wide receiver. I mean, we mentioned DPJ being gone. You still got David Bell. You still got Cedric Tillman. I mean, you have a ton of young talent on the roster. Do they want to hinder that growth? Because Keith mentioned it. You're taking reps away from somebody. Do they basically want to just say forget about David Bell? they want to say about Seth Tillman for 1 year, redshirt him basically. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens, guys. I'm not here to make predictions. But kind of like also I've tweeted, it's a possibility until it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 100%. We're just gonna see what happens. Obviously, we're gonna be keeping our eye on it until he signs. So it's gonna be the biggest news this offseason now. So all right, guys.
It always is.
Tyler, thank you for coming in and joining us with your mobile hotspot Wi-Fi.
Anytime, guys. Glad I was able to, and
yes,
at least it seemed like the internet wasn't too bad. So that's progress. That's a good sign.
And next week we should be back to our normal time, around 8:00 on Wednesday. Barring, I'm not sure what the NBA final schedule is like. We don't really want to conflict with that. So, yeah. But anyways, thank you all for joining us at this early edition of the Faithful Dawgs podcast. We will talk to you all soon. Go Browns.
Like, comment, and sub.